Well, good morning, and we are continuing our series called Mythbusters, Exploring the Truth. We're going to look at some myths that the world has led us to believe that we're going to compare that to what the Bible says about the truth. This morning, we're going to talk about the truth about our pain. Our pain. Unfortunately, pain, as we know, is a part of life. To never have pain in your life is inhuman. But if you're a human being, you have physical pain, you have emotional pain, you have relational pain, spiritual pain, you name it. And just like numerous other areas of life we're going to talk about, the world has taught us a lot of myths about pain that just aren't true. Some of them are relatively harmless, but a very destructive myth is this: if I ignore my pain, it'll just go away. Right? In other words, if I block it out, and if I totally get it out of my memory, I pretend it never happened, then I won't be in pain. Beneath that is another myth that says, it's easier just to avoid problems than to face them. And that's just not true. The fact is, God doesn't want you to ignore your pain, ignore your problems. He wants you to discover the cause so you can find relief, real relief. Pain is kind of like a warning light. It's telling you something's wrong in your life. And it's really not wise to ignore a warning light. Earl would know that. Probably several people say, my warning light's been on for several months. Something's wrong. Some people even put tape over them just so they don't see them. Some of you are admitting to that. Well, it's not wise to ignore a warning light. It's not wise to ignore your pain. It says that something is wrong. So the main truth today about this myth is pain is a tool that God uses in my life. Pain is a tool God uses in my life. The problem is, we don't often understand it, and we don't realize what the good actually is. In fact, I was reminded this week of John chapter 13, verse 7. When Jesus was washing the disciples' feet, he said, "You don't understand what I'm doing now, but someday you will." And I thought, nowhere is that truth more appropriate than pain, because oftentimes pain comes into our life. We don't understand why it's there or what it's there for. We know there's got to be some purpose, but we don't know. We don't see any purpose in it. And if pain doesn't have a purpose, it's very difficult to handle. So this morning, I want to take us through 5 things God says about pain in His Word. These are 5 ways God uses pain for good in our lives. Here we go. Number 1, God uses pain to motivate me. To motivate me. Pain propels us into action like nothing else. For instance, for me personally, I did not want to go to the orthopedic specialist about my back pain for the last several years until the pain got so bad that it was greater than my fear. Then I moved into action. I love the Good News version of Proverbs chapter 20, verse 30 that says this: "Sometimes it takes a painful experience to make us change our ways." Oh, isn't that true? Pain prompts us to do things we'd rather put off. It pushes us and compels us to change. Pain forces us to change when we don't want to change. Pain really makes you want to be changed, and God uses pain to motivate me. And I've got to admit to you, I would rarely change if I didn't have pain in my life. So God uses pain to motivate me. The second way God uses pain for good in our lives is He uses pain to direct me. To direct me. It's like, for any of you that have been around horses before, it's like that bit in a horse's mouth. God takes the pain and He turns us in different directions because of that pain. Look at this verse in Psalm 119, verse 71. "My suffering was good for me." Listen to this. "For it taught me to pay attention to your decrees." Right here, David is saying that pain is a teaching tool. Has God ever had to get your attention through pain? Oh yeah. You see, God whispers to us in our pleasure, but he shouts to us in our pain. That's the difference. God says, I want your attention. And boy, does he get it when you're in pain. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot. Just like a small rudder can turn a large ship, sometimes a little pain in your life will lead you to a new direction. And God not only propels us into action, but he guides us through the pain. Look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7. It says, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who is never disciplined by its father? Have any of you parents in here rather not have disciplined your children? Yeah. It's not easy. They think it is, but it's not. Okay, let me follow this up with how many parents, even though you'd rather not have to discipline, sometimes had to do it or have to do it anyway for their own good? Absolutely. And why do you do it? Out of love. Out of love. God is the same way. He doesn't like to allow pain in our lives, but sometimes he has to allow it to discipline us, to train us, to move us in the right direction. It's not because he's angry. It's not because he doesn't like us. It's because he loves us. In fact, I would even say to you this morning that the greatest insights that I've found in my life were found at the very center of pain. Absolutely. Some things we're only going to learn through pain because we're human beings. We have to sometimes. So God motivates us and he directs us with the pain that we have in our lives. But we never need to doubt God's love, because his motive behind allowing any pain in our lives is to guide us. It's for our good, to mature us. A third way God uses pain for good in our lives is he uses pain to evaluate me. It's a measuring tool. God uses pain to help see what you're like on the inside. For instance, when I experience pain, the way I react to it measures my faith. My commitments can be measured about like how I react to pain. My maturity can be measured by how I react to pain. My patience can be measured to how I react to pain. Ugh, that one hurts. Ugh. It's one way of seeing what's on the inside of us. You really don't know what's inside of you until you're faced with a test of pain. The Bible often compares pain to a refining fire. A refining fire is a fire you heat up to refine gold or silver, and as it heats the gold or silver, the impurities are burned off. God wants to use the pain in our lives to burn off some impurities, to burn off some things that shouldn't be there. So then the question becomes, the hurt that you're feeling right now, the pain you're experiencing maybe this week, what are you allowing it to burn off in your life? Because I can tell you, if you let it, it'll burn off materialism. It gives you a healthier perspective. If you let it, it'll burn off ego, pride. It'll burn off impatience. So many things if you allow it to refine you. Isaiah 48, last part of verse 10 says, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. Pain is a test. It exposes the real you. It shows what you're like on the inside. And you want to know why? Because it's impossible to maintain an image when you're in pain. Let me give you an example. You know, on one hand, when you're feeling good, when you've got your hair all done, ladies, when you got your makeup on, everybody's got their best clothes on, you're feeling pretty good, you've got your image, right? You even walk a certain way. Feels good. But give you 3 days at home with the flu, and your hair is messed up, you're in your pajamas and you don't care, you look pretty gross, and you couldn't care less about image. Why? Because you're miserable. And when you're miserable, you don't care about image. And God says that's good because you should care more about your character than you do about your image. Pain tests our character. You and I may say, well, I consider myself a person of integrity. But when the pain's on, will you stand for the truth or buckle under compromise? We can say, I am totally committed to Christ, Pastor. But when the pain occurs, do you want to throw in the towel and forget it? You see, you can say one thing, but pain reveals who we really are. Look at James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3 in the Message paraphrase. It says it like this: tests and challenges come at you from all sides. And you know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. I love the way the paraphrase says that. He's saying here the pressure reveals what you're like on the inside. When you're under pressure at the office or at home or at school, what are the true colors that show up there? Are you a fair weather believer or a consistent believer? This is the exact same reason why the people of Israel spent 40 years wandering in the desert. Really, in reality, it would have only taken them approximately 2 weeks to march from Egypt to Israel. But it took them 40 years. Why? Because out in that desert, God let them wander around and He put them through a few tests so that they would know what they were like on the inside. He was motivating them. He was guiding them. He was evaluating them. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2. It says, remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character, and to find out whether or not you would obey His commands. Some of you this morning are wandering the desert. And in that desert, things dry up. Maybe you're in an emotional desert right now. Maybe you've had a relationship dry up. Maybe you've had finances dry up, an opportunity. Maybe you've had your health dry up, and you're wandering through the desert. God says to you this morning, it's a test. I'm evaluating you to see what's inside of you. And when you go through these tough times and you say, you know what? I'm not sure if I have any feelings at all. I just don't feel anything. You're going through a desert. And God may be evaluating you. He may be guiding you. He may be motivating you in this time. Or, number 4, maybe He's protecting you. God uses pain to protect me. Sometimes He does. He protects us from something much worse. Sometimes He uses pain to protect us and prevent us from getting involved in something we shouldn't really be involved in. Like maybe He doesn't want you to go to a certain place because of, and you're not there because of pain. So God uses pain to protect us. For example, back to our physical being, you know that if you have a fever, that's the body's way of telling you probably have an infection and that your body needs to be dealt with. So if you never had any fever at all, that infection could take over your body. And eventually you could die from an infection. So sometimes God uses pain to protect us. And I'm simply saying this. Emotions, painful emotions, tell you something is out of whack. And when I feel depression, when I feel resentment or anger or worry, when I feel apathy or when I feel fear or hostility, it's saying to me that something is out of balance in my life, just like that fever. And it's God saying, you need to get this corrected. The emotions are simply a symptom of a bigger problem we need to address. God uses pain to guard us, to protect us. In fact, we talked about the Old Testament a while ago. Do you remember the story of Joseph in the Bible? The first part of Joseph's life is a horror story. Everything went wrong for this guy. You think you've got problems? For 40 years, he's neglected. He's rejected. Sold into slavery by his own brothers. Falsely accused of rape. Thrown into prison. And then, while he's in prison, forgotten. falsely accused. I mean, this guy's life is a massive heartache. But if you read the end of the story, you realize God was preparing him through these circumstances. And he ends up being second in command in Egypt, and not only saved Egypt, but saved Israel. And he ended up saying this to his brothers. I love this. Genesis 50, the first part of verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. Did you listen to what I told you he went through for 40 years? Now, there are obviously people in your life who mean to harm you. They may have harmed you when you were a child. They may be harming you right now, emotionally, relationally, some other way. They're out to harm you, and that does hurt. But God says, I have a plan and a purpose larger than that. They mean things for bad. I mean things for good. You see, all along in Joseph's life, God was motivating, directing, evaluating, and protecting Joseph for good because, listen to this, people, there is no greatness without pain. There is no greatness without pain. And so Joseph says, you meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. He was protecting me, and God wants to do that in your life. Finally, God uses pain to mature me, to help me grow. You see, it's a lot easier to grow spiritually and emotionally during bright, healthy, cheerful days when everything's going great and life's fantastic. Oh, I can grow a lot during those days. But the truth is, we grow far faster and far deeper in the dark time of the soul. We grow far deeper and far greater in the valleys than the mountaintops. It's just the way we're made. I've lost count of the times over the last few years in ministry where people have talked with me and said, you know, I've experienced the toughest time of my life, and I'd have to say that I've grown more through this time than any other time in my life. I can say that as well to you. Because grace grows best in adversity, and God uses pain to mature me. James chapter 1, verses 3 and 4 says, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be made perfect and complete, needing nothing. Here is the unfortunate truth. Pain is the high cost of growth. Pain is the high cost of growth. I mean, I know the old saying is corny and cliche, but it's true. There is no gain without pain. It just doesn't come any other way. I wish I could tell you there were 5 easy steps to a wonderful life. We want the maturity. We want the emotional stability. We want the health and wholeness. We want the confidence and meaning and significance and purpose of life, but I don't want the process, which is pain and suffering and tough times. But we can't short-circuit that. In fact, if I were to summarize everything I want to say this morning, it would be this. The very thing that discourages you, God uses to develop you. And it's not an accident. The very thing that discourages you the most, God uses to develop you. Look at what, again, the Message paraphrase says in James 1:4. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so you become mature and well developed. That made me think this week, you know, there's so many times when I open this book and I read the Psalms and I see the most moving, powerful, intense Psalms, and I think, how in the world was David able to write so eloquently, so beautifully in these Psalms? Well, all you have to do is think about his childhood. Because if you want to see an example of a dysfunctional family, David, his family is the prototype. I mean, he was rejected. He was put out to pasture to take care of the sheep at the farthest end while everybody else was at home partying. He spent time alone, was not loved by his father, considered least in his family, went through loneliness, rejection, neglect, all these things. And it was during those painful times that he wrote some of the most beautiful psalms. What I'm saying here is, don't waste your hurt. Don't waste your pain. It's true, it's another phrase. Pain makes some people bitter, it makes some people better. And that's our choice. So my encouragement to you today is that you give your hurt and your heart to Jesus, the great physician. You see, you really don't know what Jesus Christ is until Jesus Christ is all you've got. 1 Peter 4:19 says this, "So if you're suffering in a matter that pleases God, keep on doing what is right and trust your lives to the God who created you, for He will never fail you." You can't say that about anything or anybody else. He will never fail you.